Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to our 39th Dissipation of Glamour webinar. We're starting a new section today, not necessarily working through the book Glamour World Problem sequentially, but in any case, working through the book. I've got a little change of venue here. I'm in my grandson's room here in California, surrounded by Lego blocks, Harry Potter and Batman and all the all the rest of the array. He's got a lot of seventh ray, so he's a good builder, and so it's a bit of a change for me. And I'm glad that we can embark upon a new section of the book. We've been working, first we worked with the technique of light. You know, it was the focusing of the three aspects of light, the light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the soul, into a searchlight to dispel glamour. We've also been studying the technique whereby of the presence. It's a still more advanced technique. We really haven't gotten into the meditations of them yet, but this is the means by which intuition is evoked, and we use it to dispel illusion. So, technique of presence, the dispelling of illusion, technique of light, the dissipation of glamour, and now something quite interesting that we'll be working on for some months, I think. It's called the technique of indifference, and it's for the dispersion of Maya. Now, you know, all those words, Maya, glamour, illusion, they can be used in a loose manner, but they can also be used in a more technical manner. So I think Master DK here is using them in a more technical manner, and it's referring to the etheric and physical levels which offer a kind of obstruction. And well, it offers a kind of barrier, you might say, to the impact of the subtler energies which we wish to invoke and have descend. Now, I'd like to, just welcome you here, just running through the names really quickly, your first name especially, and then if other people join as we go along, well, we're welcome to them too. But to you, Zach, welcome, and to Winnie and Vera and Tiu and Sheldon and Risto and Renee and Regina, Peg, Olivia, Noradine, Myrna, Michael, Mariut, Margot, Leslie, Karen, Yoke, John, Joan, Jean, Jan, Helena, and GP. I'm still not sure what that means. Maybe I've been told, but I seem to forget. I'm sorry. Deborah, Dacia, Ecclesia, Catherine, Carl, Annette, and Anne-Marie, Alex, and Alex. And then we're backed up here by BL, by Brett, and by Joe. They're helping us with whatever I may do incorrectly or if we lose contact. So let's proceed. Well, I also want to announce, and I'm going to ask Joe or Brett or BL to help me with this. As some of you know, we're on the evening schedule right now, the 5 p.m. GMT schedule, and we're tomorrow we're going to have the invoking of the soul of nations as usual, and then the next day the attracting money for hierarchical purposes Sunday. But I've in the academic study of the science of triangles, I've had to choose a new time here. It's my daughter's 50th birthday, it only comes once, so all kinds of things are going on here in California, and right in the middle of the time that I would be talking to you. So instead, I've chosen to present this next Science of Triangles webinar at 5 a.m. on Monday the 3rd. So this will mean different things, and that's GMT, remember. It's not summertime. It's GMT. It always stays the same. It's always universal time. So if you want to join us then, I'm going to ask Joe or Brett or BL to put in the, what will be the chat box, I suppose, to put in the link for that webinar. And probably a lot of you already have it. You know, it may be the one we've been using or may not. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm going to ask them to do that so you can pick it up and join us on Monday the 3rd. For some of you, it will be, of course, still the evening of the 2nd. If we want to continue the study of Master DK's work in the Esoteric Astrology book, you know, there's about 100 pages there about the science of triangles. It's magnificent. And we'll pick up other things as well scattered throughout the books. And then you have the normal broadcast link, which is our comprehensive ASK link. Ask. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open to you. It's a little acronym for the science of invocation, which we are all studying. Let's just have a little alignment now before we get into our reading, and then, of course, our meditation. This is a day in which we're going to move from the attempt to help dissipate the glamour of egotism. It's certainly not gone yet. And remember, we've been working also with the glamour of hate and separativeness, but now we're going to be moving into the pervasive glamour related to the third-ray personality of our planet, and it's the glamour of materialism. So that will be, when Olivia, Hansen, Tuija, Robbins, and myself, when we started this, we decided, well, the world is not in very good shape here in many respects, and we want to work in such a way that we can help subjectively to bring humanity more in line with the divine plan. All of these glamours are interrelated, and they all make each other worse, you might say. So when you dissipate one of them, you come, you're weakening others as it happens. So, if we would dissipate the glamour of egotism to a degree, and we, obviously would have to work years and years on that, but we'll cover a variety of glamours. We would already strike a blow against materialism. We would strike a blow against hatred and separativeness. So whatever glamour we may work on individually or in the world sense, in a way, we are weakening all the other glamours as well. So let's just, we're on all the different continents. Well, not all, but we are, in the Americas, and we're in Europe, and we're in Australasia, we're in Australia, New Zealand, and I think some other places as well, but that is the triangle largely with which we are working. And we want to relate to each other not as personalities, not as the lower mind, not as the emotional desire nature, and not as the vital and physical nature. Those are all important, but we are something else. Excuse me, more essentially. We want to relate to each other on the plane of the higher mind, which is the plane of soul, and that's our more permanent reincarnating presence, our being, our more persistent consciousness. And on that level, we all know each other in a kind of unity which is disrupted by the illusions, glamours, and mayas of the lower world. So we try to feel each other as souls. And realize that we're all in the same space of consciousness, you might say. And really, if we were to get down to the truth of the matter, we are not separate beings at all. We are all emanations, finally, of the one infinite being, as Master DK tells us when he describes the nature of harmlessness. Harmlessness is the attitude of the man who realizes himself to be everywhere, who lives consciously as a soul, whose nature is love, whose method is inclusiveness, and for whom all forms are alike, in that they veil and hide the light, the one light, and are but externalizations of the one infinite being. If any of us want to go in search of what we are that one infinite being who is manifesting in countless, countless for us anyway, countless emanations. And we have to put all that back together in every universe so that the great unity and oneness is re-achieved. And it's glamour, illusion, and Maya, which at this point prevent our realization, our ongoing steady realization of this this oneness. So we are working together, we make ourselves available to the spiritual hierarchy of our planet, and in case, let's put it like this, you've probably seen this chart, but there it is, and Master DK, I think it can be found in Initiation, Human and Solar, and these are charts that my friend Keith Bailey colored in. They're found in the books, and he uses them for the Ancient Universal Mysteries Reformation of Masonry work. And we're using these colored charts to help us clarify what really is the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, and we're all included in it in a way. We're not masters of the wisdom, that will be a while, nor are we totally self-sacrificial fourth degree initiates like the initiate Jesus or Father Damien, others, but we're on our way down here. The disciples and the aspirants are still included in the circle, and the hierarchy goes on and on and on past the solar logos, past and until we reach again the one being of our cosmos. So with all that in mind, making ourselves available in service, we sound the sacred word and prepare for our study work together, our questions, our statements, and finally our meditation on the formula which Master DK gave for the use of the technique of light in the dissipation of glamour. Okay, so let's Let's study some of these sections. We'll see how far we get. This is the beginning of Dissipation of Glamour Initiative number 39. We're on page 240 in the book Glamour, A World Problem. And it's been a long time since I've really read this the way I should. But I've been studying these books for 45 years, I guess. These books particularly, and then before that, theosophy books. So it's always good to revisit, and I'm always surprised by how little I know about the true and deep hierarchical teaching. It's always a surprise, and to realize that there's so much more that we've been given that we can ever possibly assimilate. So this is just a little summary here on illusion and glamour before we get into the question of the technical meaning of Maya. Not Maya in terms of the great world Maya as is understood in the Brahmanical and Hindu Indian approach. That is valid, but it's more specific. Those words can be used in an encompassing approach, or they can be used technically, and Master DK is using them technically. Illusion. And as we go through this, whatever strikes you, make a note of it. You may want to say something. You may want to ask a question when we come to that portion. So we study together. Illusion is the mode of mind, I might say, whereby limited understanding and material knowledge interpret truth. There are many definitions to things, and this is a good one. We all have limited understanding, and when it comes to illusion, do we think we're ever done with it? I mean, to a certain extent, illusion, in its grosser form, is overcome at the third initiation, but that's just the beginning. There, a kind of unity is realized, and the worst illusions of time and space are overcome. They are realized to be modes of consciousness or categories of mind, as the philosopher Immanuel Kant told us. He may have well been an initiate of the third degree, on the third ray, of course, of philosophy. And so that's the beginning of the overcoming the illusion, but, you have to go to the sixth degree of Chohanship to overcome the next major illusion of the 5 lower planes of superhuman and human evolution. And then the 9th initiation, finally, we overcome the illusion of the cosmic physical plane. But that is just the beginning. There are 10 great planes of cosmos, we are told in the old commentary, and every ascent, subplane by subplane, cosmic plane by cosmic plane, clarifies the vision and understanding of the perceiving entity. So even our planetary logos is in a state of cosmic illusion. Even the solar logos and beings beyond are in a state of cosmic illusion. And the one great logos of the cosmos, the universal logos, I call it, is not in a state of illusion with respect to the cosmos that he has generated, or it has generated from itself, but compared to the absolute infinitude of ultimate reality, yes, indeed, even that great being is in a state of limitation and illusion. So we'll try to keep things within boundaries here. Our first step is to overcome fragmentation, separation, the illusion of separateness that we have been dealing with in some of our work. So we have limited understanding, all of us do, And if we don't, well, we're going to learn the hard way. We have limited understanding. And we have relatively material knowledge, and we use these things to interpret truth, which can only be interpreted with still higher faculties. So the very first thing in any of these studies is that we have to have a pretty strong degree of humility, which is, as Master DK tells us, an adjusted sense of right proportion. An adjusted sense of right proportion. And which one of us really has that? So illusion is the mode whereby limited understanding, let's admit it, and material knowledge relatively interpret truth, veiling and hiding the truth behind a cloud of thought forms. So we sometimes think we're really getting at something when we generate all these thoughts, but in fact we are creating a kind of a miasma which has to be gotten out of the way if we are to have what Master Moria calls straight knowledge, direct intuitive perception of the truth, unmediated by all of these thoughts we have about the truth. The thoughts that we have about the truth are not the truth itself. Those thought forms become then more real, at least to the individual, more seemingly real, than the truth they veil, and consequently control man's approach to reality. In other words, we think we see the real, and we act as if we have seen the real, and we approach our life on the basis of what we have seen, but it's an illusory approach until we really can see clearly. Through illusion, he becomes aware of the apparatus of thought. We're told that the thinker and the thought and that which is the means of thought, they're all one thing, we are told. He becomes aware of the apparatus of thought, of its activity, expressed in thought form building, and we all do it, that's the nature of man, and of that which succeeds in constructing. Of that which he succeeds in constructing, that's the thought itself, the thought forms, and which he views as the creation of his intellect. Well, all of this is good. We have to reach the phase in our development where we finally can think. We've been through thousands of lives, most of which we have not been able to think very well. Even back in old Atlantis, thought was just coming in for the advanced types of the human race rather than simply desire. So we're in the, philosophically speaking, we're in the Aryan root race, moving into the sixth root race, and we can use our minds, but the height of mental development will only be reached in the Aquarian age, in the middle decanate, ruled by the planet of thought and intellect, Mercury. And that'll be another 1,000 years ahead of us. So anyway, he's becoming aware of his apparatus of thought and becomes the thinker. The soul is called the thinker. Okay. And more we are becoming the soul. He has, that's us, he has, however, created a barrier with all this thinking. So we have to be careful. With all this thinking, he's created a barrier between himself and that which is reality itself, that which actually is real and does exist. The thoughts are a barrier. And until he has exhausted the resources of his intellect, now notice that, you can't really skip that. Until he has exhausted the resources of his intellect, or has deliberately refused to utilize it. In other words, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we're supposed to quiet the mind and subdue the modifications of the thought form making faculty in order for reality to appear. Until he has exhausted the resources of his intellect or has deliberately refused to utilize it, even though he could, his divine intuition cannot function. So, when you look at the chart, at least one of them, we're working here on the plane of mind, but the divine intuition is occurring on the Buddhic level, and especially on the fourth subplane of the Buddhic level. And so we have to quiet the thought form making capacity of the lower mind especially, in order for the intuition via the rainbow bridge, the antikarana, to make a real impression. So, the old saying, be still. It's good for all third-rate types, right? Be still and know that I am God. And in the stillness, one finds oneself as being the true inner deity. That doesn't mean that we can do all things here that we, as the deity, can do on the highest level of cosmos. Far from it. But in the stillness, we learn more and more what we are. So all of our thinking creates a barrier between ourselves and what really is. And we have to say, I can't do any more. I can't go beyond the thinking I have done. That's it. I can't reach truth via this thinking. That's why Moses, in the story anyway, he was never able to enter the promised land. Of course, he was a high initiate, and to a certain extent he had entered the promised land, which has to do with true consciousness. Not the material promised land, that's an illusion, but the promised land of true spiritual consciousness. So you have to suspend the thought form making tendencies of the lower mind before we can see the real. Now, there's this old fairy tale of the shoemaker and the elves, and it tells the story. Here's this poor shoemaker, and he's falling behind in his work and all the rest of it. So he prepares all the materials to make the shoes, but he's too tired to finish it, and so he just puts it out on the table, and he says, I'll take care of it in the morning. Wakes up in the morning, and the shoe is done. The shoes are complete. What happened? And this goes on several times. He prepares the shoes, and then he wakes up in the morning, and they're done. This is what we mean by sleeping on it. Well, I don't know the answer. I've got to sleep on it, okay? So one night he decided to observe, and what he saw was two little elves came out and put the shoes together while he was supposedly asleep. Well, that's the intuition. And the intellect is to prepare all the materials, and finally the intuition puts it all together into a wholeness. That's what we want to learn how to do. So until we've exhausted the resources of our intellect, I just can't go any further with the intellect, and then the divine intuition, then it will function. It is the intuition which reveals true being, and of course that's what we are. We are true being, and the true identity of everything, whether it's a tiny little amoeba or a blue whale or a planet or whatever. The being is the nature of that entity. That's the real identity of that, whether tiny or vast entity. So it is the intuition which reveals true being and which induces the state of spiritual perception. That's why it's called the spiritual triad, because there, in the true ego, as we call it, or the true soul, which we call the spiritual triad, and there it is shown to us in this diagram. This is the true ego, or the true soul. There, the spiritual perception can occur. And then, when that happens, the technique of the presence becomes an established habit. That means, well, what does it mean? We can talk about what it means, but how many of us are always, 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 and consistently aware of the presence, the true being, the isness of anything you see, of anything you perceive in any manner? Isness first, quality second. It's a good thing to understand the quality and interrelationships of things and the hierarchy of values, which is determined by quality. The higher the quality, the more any unit is worth in terms of all the relationships within a given whole. But there's something that comes even before that, and it is pure isness. And when we can wipe away our preoccupation with better and worse and higher and lower and all the pairs of opposites, then we see the true being of a thing. Now, it's so simple, that it kind of drives you crazy. It's not, you can't live life that way because you have to handle quality. But if you can handle quality intelligently and still stay attuned with the isness of everything you're dealing with, it's a much deeper level of living. So the technique of presence, and we're going to do some meditation on the technique of the presence. In the Moria Federation, I went in there with what DK had given and amplified it a bit and devised a meditation which deals with the presence. So, maybe some of you are in the Moria Federation. Certainly like to invite you to participate in the 5, 7, or 8, or who knows how many years it takes to get through Master DK's curriculum, or at least our approximation to Master DK's curriculum. And of course, I'd like to invite you to our coming conference in a new venue, beginning an 8-year cycle and 9 conferences until the all-important year 2025. It's in Chandler, Arizona, lovely place, and I'd love to see you there in person. So think about that, because there's something very beautiful about getting together with your brothers and sisters who are on the spiritual path and reinforcing each other's energy. Okay, so this is what DK says about illusion. It's a nice summary, and actually what we really need to do is make a big compilation on illusion and see these things from every possible angle as we study topically, according to the topic, not just reading horizontally, which we also have to do, but studying the topically, all the references, and they begin to relate to each other in a new way. So let us not be the victim of our limited understanding, and let us have more than material knowledge. Let us learn how to have spiritual knowledge and interpret what we call truth with spiritual knowledge, and then we will gradually loosen ourselves from the grip which illusion has upon us. Now, there's another paragraph here which I'd like to deal with before we maybe get into our question and answer kind of things. It's glamour. It's a summary on glamour, which is really, excuse me, more an emotional state. Glamour, in its turn, veils and hides the truth behind the fogs and mists of feeling and emotional reaction. It's all about what you want and what you desire, and the desires become so strong that you start wanting things that aren't real at all, and yet you treat them as if they're the most important thing in the world, and we give our life for these unrealities, and we never really see clearly the true hierarchical value of things. I tried to define it to myself. Glamour is like exaggeration or minimization. I am overestimating something, or I'm underestimating something, and I'm not seeing things in a true proportion, exactly what anything means within a particular context. I'm just not seeing it. I'm exaggerating, I'm minimizing, and I'm wasting a lot of time going after things with my desires which are not really worth it in the long run. I try to be simple about what glamour is, and each one of you can define it for yourself and what it has done in your life. Now, this is, the DK says a really interesting thing here. He says that glamour is of unique and terrible potency. It's so interesting, he's using very dramatic words here. And he said at one point, well, it may have been a very long time since I, Master DK, was subject to glamour, and it may have been not that long a time since Alice Bailey was subject to glamour, but each of us has a horror of glamour. So, it has humanity in its grip because the Atlantean consciousness is still very, very prominent in humanity, and it really maybe 85% of the people are still emotionally polarized, emotionally focused, and subject to glamour. And so, it can destroy the world. It can destroy humanity. It has a unique and terrible potency. So that's why he bothers to write a book called Glamour, a World Problem. And when he said, when you look at the astral plane, you might think, oh, it's really a beautiful place. But he says it's just covered by clouds and fogs and mists, and one does not see anything with real clarity. Okay, so it is of unique and terrible potency owing to the strength of human nature to identify itself with the astral nature, the emotional nature, and to the vital nature of conscious and sentient response itself. It's very energized. Now, if you look at the chart we so often use, you will see a dotted line on the mental plane separating the higher mind from the lower line. And if you go down here, sorry for this, can't get rid of this black thing here. But anyway, if you go down here to the physical plane, you'll see 4 planes which are etheric, a dotted line, and 3 planes which are dense. It's divided. But when you look at the astral plane, there is no dotted line. It is a unified plane. It is a powerful plane. And why is it so powerful? Because our great solar God, our solar logos, whatever we want to call that being, is just emerging from his own emotional polarization. We're living in an astral Buddhic solar system, and we are not yet cosmically, mentally polarized, and he's working on that. So there's a huge emotional development in our present solar system. Now, it's compounded by the fact that we live on a non-sacred planet, and our planetary logos is full of struggles on the cosmic astral plane and is emotionally polarized and has not yet taken the initiation, the second cosmic initiation, which will mean that this logos has overcome his difficulties on his own type of astral plane, and that affects all of us. So it really makes potent the condition of our own astral nature, because we're within these larger systems where planetarily the astral problem is not solved on our planet. We're a non-sacred planet. We have not solved the astral problem at all. And we are the victim, cosmically considered, of what's called personality in relation to our planetary logos. If you want to, sort of the 1, 2, 3 of it, your solar plexus is your personality, your heart is your soul. That's a real easy way of differentiating it. And our planetary logos, well, he doesn't even have the full solar plexus development. That's coming. But the heart development is not there when it comes to penetrating the lower planes, and he's working on that from a cosmic perspective. So anyway, glamour there, for all of us, is of a unique and terrible potency. And we have such a tendency to identify ourselves with the astral nature. Now, as you know, he says, and have been taught, glamour can only be dissipated by the inflow of clear, directed light. We use the 5th ray, we use the ajna center, we use the combination of 3 lights projecting from the ajna center, and it's not, very interestingly, it's not dissipated by the intuition per se. As a matter of fact, if we contact the Buddhic level and the soul, it may even heighten the glamour that we've been working in. If we try methods which are too high, we may throw so much energy in there that the glamour may become bigger. But the thinking of the clear beam of light of the mind, along with the light of the soul and the light of matter, that can dissipate the glamour. Clear, directed beam, laser beam of light. This is true of the life of the individual or of humanity as a whole. So we need to learn how to think clearly about what these glamours do in our life and to visualize a will-strengthened beam of group light working in the way we have been working these many months. Illumination reveals, first of all, the existence of glamour. So, if we're just an ordinarily astrally focused person, we're the victim of glamour. We're not going to see it at all. And that's the way a lot of people are in this world. They're just the victim of it. They don't see it. Okay. But when we begin to wake up mentally, we stand back and we say, whoa, look at that. That's my reaction to these things. And it's a real problem because it's keeping me from being effective, useful to the hierarchy, worker with the divine plan. The illumination of the mind held steady in the light, begins to reveal the glamour. It provides the distressing contrasts, meaning I see the light, I don't see the light. I see the light, I don't see the light, okay? It provides the distressing contrasts with which all true aspirants, and remember all true aspirants are at least initiates of the first degree, wrestle. We all wrestle with these opposites, and then gradually it floods the life to such an extent that eventually glamour completely vanishes. That's the light of the soul, mind, and matter flood into the astral plane and our whole life, and eventually this glamour, like the clouds, is dissipated. Men then, I put the then in, excuse me, see things as they are. And the glamour has been a facade, really. It's very attractive. We think we love it, we go for it. But it's a facade hiding the good, the beautiful, and the true. On the astral plane, you don't find the good, the beautiful, and the true. You find your own replica of the good, beautiful, and the true. A lot of people think they're contacting the masters. Well, they're not. They're contacting replicas, thought forms of the masters, and not the real master. They're not contacting the good, the beautiful, true, which is the master. They're just images of the masters, and we give all of our attention to those images and think they are real, and it creates quite a mess in the esoteric field. Okay, so the opposites, which are soul and personality, the vertical opposites, are then resolved, and consciousness is superseded. Now, that's interesting. Our normal consciousness is superseded by a condition of realization. Now, that's found on the atmic plane, right? On the fifth level of the atmic plane, you see with real eyes and not the false eyes that have scales in front of them. A condition of realization, a realization of being. Now, that's what we're all trying to achieve here so we can get our true identity. We have to see being, we have to be being, and we have to know that we are being. A realization of being for which there is no adequate term. Well, he uses the term sometimes identification. And the technique of light becomes a permanent condition. So notice here, the technique of the presence up here becomes an established habit, and the technique of light becomes a permanent condition. We're always able to see through the glamour and unreality, and we're able to see and identify with being. But, for people like ourselves, it happens now and then, and there's a great clarification now and then, and what we want is to be a steadily approaching point of light and not just a point of approach and a point of recession and approach and recession back and forth. We want the master to look in our direction and see a steadily approaching point of light. Okay, well, I can see that this is a very rich section, and I'm going to have to wait till the next time to get into what we're going to call here the technique of indifference. which is, that it was my intention, but now I'll just have to say that this will be the end of academic reading for Doggy, the Dissipation of Glamour Initiative, number 39. And I forget what page we're on here, but looks like we're on page 241, and the whole thing has been on page 241. 240 and 241, that's what it is. So it's been pages 240 and 242, 241. And then next time we get together, beginning of BGN, of academic, if I can only spell, ACA, maybe there's two C's somewhere. Okay, sorry. Academic reading for Doggy number 40. And we'll start here at pages 241. All right, well, basically what we've just done then is look at some interesting things about summarizing what we've been studying, the technique of the presence and the technique of light. We've been looking at the way to use the intuition and what creates illusion and how the intuition can help dispel illusion, and we've been looking at glamour and how a clear beam of reasoning, clear thought can dissipate the glamour. And then next time we work, we're going to start, he calls it a brief study, but it's really, it's really pretty involved, and it will involve the technique of indifference. It will involve inspiration. It will involve what he calls the science of the breath, and it will go on for some 20 pages and will take us some months to really study carefully. My hope with all of this is that we can get through quite a bit of this book, and that it can be useful to you individually as psychologically you begin to understand the malfunctions which occur within your own psyche, which prevent you and prevent me and anyone from seeing the truth and being the truth. We understand that. And then to apply the methods of intuition, of light, and of indifference, divine indifference, that's what we're going to learn about, to be rid of the things which prevent us from seeing reality as it is. Okay, friends, so you've had a week here, and maybe you've been thinking about some things, or maybe you have some statements that you want to offer verbally, or maybe you have some questions or statements that you want to offer in a written form. So you can do that now if you like. And it's in the question box. You can do that. And yeah, okay. And here I see that our staff has offered the link for okay, wait a second. Did I say June 1st? That should be April 3rd, not June 3rd. It's April 3rd, 2017, as far as I know, unless I think, Brett, take a look at that, will you? Because I'm talking about Monday, April 3rd, so something's not quite. Okay. Anyway, I want people to have the link for this coming Science of Triangles, which is going to be offered at 5 a.m. GMT on the morning of April.
Yep, I'll fix it.
The 3rd. Okay, thanks, Brett. You bet. Okay, friends, have you got anything you would like to say, ask, comment upon? And Olivia, I see you. Okay, go ahead, Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Well, we know that all of humanity contributes its emotions and kama manas activity to the astral plane just by how we live in the world. But one interesting thing is that the deliberate attempts to distort what are facts and how hard it is for people to agree what is a fact. And so an interesting thing is we just had testimony in the United States in front of Congress that Russia had used and probably still is 15,000 operatives of disinformation and hacking to plant fake news and disinformation and divisiveness in our country and government, as well as social media trolls to manipulate and plant fake news. So it isn't enough that we're just doing this by ourselves. Individuals contributing to the glamour and illusion, but we have all these deliberate attempts, and it's not just in our country, but it's going on towards Europe and really all over the world. So I think that the more aware we become of this, what a serious problem it is to distort things. Besides humanity's natural inclinations, we see also how challenging our problem is and how important it is for us to continue to use light to dissolve the glamour on the astral plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very important point. It seems like the revelations are becoming more and more astonishing in terms of the numbers. I'm reminded of what DK said when he said that, if you fail to overcome your dweller, and this has to be done somewhere before the third initiation, you will become either on the first ray a destroyer of souls, or on the second ray you will become a deluder of souls, a misleader of souls, and on the third ray you will become a manipulator of souls. And what we have seen here now is this attempt at deluding and manipulating. I don't think anybody has the power right now to do the destruction work. But people obviously are motivated by the personality and by its claims and by the lower ego. Especially the leaders have, I think, a very strong lower ego, and are attempting to control the expression of the soul of other people, which would really bring in the will of God. So we have a very serious situation, and it's reaching all over the world, and we're going to have to see whether we love truth enough, and whether there's enough people in the United States and in other countries of the world who love truth enough to deflect this attempt at control of the higher by the lower. It's a very sad and dangerous situation. So thank you for bringing that up, Olivia. It's really astonishing. And we cannot just pass it by. We have to get to the bottom of it. And in getting to the bottom of it, we're going to have another crisis in the United States and also in the world, I dare say. Thank you for bringing that up. It is obviously untruth. It's untruth, you see. And glamour is all about finding the truth, this work of dissipating glamour and dispelling illusion. And we're being blanketed. Is it Satan? Satan has very interesting meaning. Actually, HPB says that the real Satan is the whole host of solar angels. From a more pedestrian understanding, it's the lower mind, the emotions, and the physical nature, the 666. And from that perspective, we're told that Satan, or the devil, is the father of lies. The father of lies. And we just have lies flooding the whole world at this point. We call it fake news, whatever it is. It's the attempt to deceive people and keep them from the truth. We really have to fight that. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Tuija, please go ahead. Wait a second. I can't. Can you unmute yourself, Tuija? I'm having yourself muted right now. You've got to unmute yourself before you. There you go. Okay.
Okay, now.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, hello to everybody. Hello. Michael, I just wanted to still emphasize that it is correctly said when do we have the triangle webinar. So it is on the 2nd on Sunday at 5 p.m. GMT.
Wait a
Did you
second.
say correctly?
No, we're gonna.
I heard that you said
No,
8.
we're gonna have to talk about that because there's so much confusion. I made a mistake, but it's going to be on April 3rd in the morning, and some people will have it on the 2nd in the United States. But we'll send out a mailing on this because I've gone back and forth. My fault. I made a mistake there, but I've just sent out a big mailing to everybody about when it is. So we have to stick to that now because I've made 2 mistakes. I don't want to make 3 mistakes. So on the.
Oh, you changed.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. It has not then reached me.
Okay,
So
and
you
that's
are
true. And that's
talking.
true. Something we have to have Brett and all send it out on the morning of April 3rd, GMT at 5 a.m. We will have the Science of Triangles continuation. For a lot of people, that will be on April 2nd, the night before. So I just sent out all that information. And Mercury's not even retrograde, you know? Okay, so anyway, I made a mistake. I apologize for that, but we'll have to stick to it at this point. And then in the...
This is false news.
This is fake
Or
news. Fake
alternative
news.
news.
But then earlier in the day, there will be the attracting money for hierarchical purposes. And that will occur at 5 p.m. on Sunday. 5 p.m. on Sunday in our Ask program, Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes.
Thank you for telling me.
I'm so sorry. I just apologize. But what can I do? You know, I'm just not as young as I used to be, and I was having a senior moment. What can I say? But it always takes
Right.
your wife to remind you of these things. Okay. Anything you want?
The one you remind it first, she can remind you.
What would you like to?
Okay.
Did you want to say anything further to you before?
Well, I was thinking it is horrid information that Olivia was just saying, and it is here too. All the time it is discussed, and one can be very desperate about this situation when one wants to follow the correct line. And it reminds me what DK said, that how one of the important things for disciples is to learn the abilities, that we have to become sensitive and learn to read the energies. That is something what is going to save us when we start to recognize the energy of truth.
Exactly.
So then we can distinguish what is false and what is truth.
Because how does one know? And the interesting thing is the intuition does know. The intuition knows. The mind may not know, but the intuition knows. So we need to make ourselves more sensitive and help people discern. Now, if you train the mind well enough, it can reach the truth laboriously. The truth is reached by the intuition directly and immediately. So we have to train ourselves in the processes. Okay, good. Thank you, Tuija.
And we can see everywhere how the Black Lodge is rising in all kinds of levels. And when we think about the evolution, that we have always monsters somewhere. When we were in the jungle, there were physical monsters or the predators which were hunting us. And then we have been fighting with the emotions, but this is on the mental plane, and all these four things, it has to come, of course. And it just reminds that these times are ending, and we have to strengthen our lives as well.
The dweller rises. Before 2025 and the great conclave 100-year meeting of the hierarchy, the dweller on the threshold of humanity rises. Pluto is bringing it up for everybody to see. Now, there's said to be, in Agni Yoga, we learn that there's a place called Mara. M-A-R-A, or Marakara, the place of evil and illusion on the astral plane. It's very interesting that the Buddha defeated that center. When he was under the Bodhi tree, he was achieving his sixth initiation, so to speak. He defeated the representatives of Mara, and he dispelled illusion when it came to his own consciousness, and he touched the cosmic mental plane, we are told. But we haven't done that, okay? We human beings haven't done that yet. And we can follow his example of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. We have to get rid of illusion and glamour in our lives, and also this chaotic confusion we call Maya. We have to get rid of all of them. Okay, thank you, Tuija. Sheldon, please go ahead.
Well, first off, Michael, happy birthday.
Oh, my goodness.
Even though age affects all of us, these birthdays can be celebrations of light as well. I'm glad you're there with Heidi.
Okay, thank you. And
happy birthday, Sheldon.
And you know what happened? Master Moria said, ironically, he said, pretty soon they'll be celebrating their birthdays. He didn't take such a... But anyway.
Yes, well, it is very, very human.
but okay, for the stuff.
Well, I just want to comment.
Yeah.
I'll comment on what Olivia and Tuija were talking about as well, and you said it. It seems to me that all of this, the fake news, all this is coming into the light. I mean, it's astonishing what we can read and see now to see how clear this is becoming, what we're facing. So I just want to say that there is we're getting some maybe kind of Libran help, to be vague about it, but there's some balancing that's going on. You mentioned Pluto and Capricorn. There is a way by which we're able to see these things and make some judgments. So I'm, you can, you know how I am. I'm encouraged by many things, but this all coming to light is marvelous. And I also wanted to add too that as you were talking about these, glamour and illusion, I was thinking about the kind of human help we're getting from psychology today. On the glamour side, the whole cognitive psychologist, I forget the name of the founder of this, but
Albert Ellis. They
ask these great questions, which makes you think. And Byron Katie does the same thing. Is it true? Is it really true? When you ask questions, this is kind of a human way of pulling these lights together to see if we can see through what's really going on.
Yeah.
I also want to mention on the illusion side, we heard a wonderful talk. I'll try to make this really brief and just some strokes. By Eben Alexander, neurosurgeon, went through one of these near-death experiences. Cortex is wiped out. Has a remarkable experience of heaven, as he calls it. Wrote a book about it. He is now quite a scientist and philosopher, and he's talking about the fact that the brain is now being seen as the physical brain that we have is a filter on true consciousness.
Yes.
And he's talking about, you would understand the term very well, but it's philosophical idealism, that the real truth here is when the certain part of the brain gets out of the way from a physical level, we would say, the light of the intuition. So I just want to mention Alexander's work. He is doing some remarkable things, a new book coming out, and he's gathered together a series of thinkers and writers on the same subject. So we're getting some help from the human side, besides DK telling us, here's what we can do. We're reaching up from our level up. So I see some good things here that we can get our hands on. Yeah.
Yes, I always rely upon you, Sheldon, to give us the good news. And you never fail in that. And by the way, happy birthday to you tomorrow, as long as I've got to get even now, okay? So all the best. And the inventor, the proponent of cognitive psychology using the fifth ray, Albert Ellis, a very fifth ray guy. Maybe you have seen the psychological movie called Gloria. Interesting, because that was her name. She was a woman who volunteered to be to have therapy with a therapeutic session with three different psychologists, right? One was Albert Ellis, one was Carl Rogers, Mr. Second Ray himself, and another one was Fritz Perls of Gestalt psychology, a man bristling with first ray. So there was the first ray, the second ray, and the fifth ray approach, and they all did her a lot of good. In the last analysis, Ellis was so super rational, getting to the bottom of what we really think and what we believe to be true using the fifth ray. The kindness of Carl Rogers was overwhelming, and the penetrating intolerance of Fritz Perls, as he rejected all kinds of BS, well, she ended up saying Perls did me the most good. He was certainly the most unpleasant, that's for sure. But he used the first ray and got to the bottom of the story. So it's interesting. Probably on the internet you can find this film because it's an old film, and it's very interesting. Okay, thank you, Sheldon. Let's take a look at who else has their hands raised. Olivia, you have your hand raised again. Go ahead. You're on self-mute, Olivia, somehow.
My hand didn't go down, but it should have. Okay, I'm altered. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Okay. Sorry. Let's see who else here wants to, and you can also write a statement or question if you wish. And Jan, okay, let's see, you have a question. Okay, let's see what you got here. It's a long one, and
Michael.
Yes.
There's one from Dacia above that too.
Okay. Well, let's look at these two things together. Why don't we do that? Okay. So Dacia, I'll just start at the top and then go on to Jan's. So Dacia says, on a personal level, while we need to seek out what is true in the news of the world, we can ask ourselves moment by moment, what am I putting into the field of shared consciousness? Okay. We each take personal responsibility for the quality of our energetic contribution. I think that's a real true statement, Dacia, and it involves really learning how to be a self-observing disciple, the attitude of the observer, and it involves dealing with our individual glamours as well as world glamours. Now, we've taken kind of the unprecedented step here of jumping into the dissipation of world glamour, but are we fit to do so? That's a question. So we have to somehow account for our own individual contribution if we're going to be of any use in the larger picture. And so, at the end of every day, we pause and we do our evening reflection, our evening review, and we look back maybe at what have we put into the world? What have, through our thoughts, through our actions, really, what have been the causes? What are the patterns that have trapped us and that we're repeating? Anyway, it's an occult technique, and we try to work with it. So sounding the note of individual responsibility here is extremely important. Now, Jan here is saying, hello, friends. I was considering the growth of awareness in the area of glamour. It seems like it is a type of background growth, as our first experience in our involvement with glamour is an attraction of some sort. And, it happened very early in the game, millions of years ago, Jan. Really, as a matter of fact, what the Black Lodge did, basically, in old Atlantean days is it strengthened the desire nature of humanity and gave them all kinds of false goals to which they could direct their desires. So it's a long time ago that this attraction really began. Then this eventually develops to determine what we don't want. Okay, well, because our sense of values improves, and we realize by bitter experience or happy experience where our desires have led. We find the attraction of the desire for the glamour at first, and maybe are involved with it for a while, until we get sick of it, I guess, until we desire to free ourselves from its hold, because eventually nothing but the spirit will do. Only the spirit and its unlimited capacity will satisfy the spirit that we are. So we always outgrow any temporary fixation, whether it's bad or even if it's good, The causal body is destroyed and it's good, but it's a limitation. So we stay with it for a while until we want to outgrow it. Maybe it becomes meaningless enough or clear enough in its harmful nature, hopefully for us now. that is the case because we have a little more psychological sophistication. Maybe some glamours aren't even recognized as a detriment. Well, in the beginning, they certainly aren't, but later we see where they lead. I mean, let's say that here's how DK tells us it was. Italy was illusion, Germany was glamour, and Japan was Maya. And those were the Axis powers, the triangle, reflecting the attempt of the evil forces to take over the world. And it took a long time to wake up from that. But in the bitterness of defeat, there was an awakening, and we certainly see it has taken hold in these countries, and maybe the most of all in Germany, which was the most afflicted by the strongest force, which was the glamour. So they certainly didn't recognize that as a detriment. They thought it was just wonderful, this exalted racial egotism that they had. Okay, so it has the illusion of learning backwards. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yes, of course, and that's like the evening review, of finding what direction we don't want to go before we find the right direction we do. I would say the two work back and forth in kind of an interplay. At least that's the way it works for me. The yes, the no, constantly reflecting each other. Many years seem to be wasted before the worthlessness of glamour is seen. Yeah, sadly true, and it just depends on how much we apply ourselves to really seeing what we're doing. The attitude of the observer is what we cultivate, right? Well, okay, the attitude of the observer. Eventually, the observer is the monad itself. If we are successful at this attitude of the observer, we eventually reach our true monadic nature. So it may be many years, as you say. It can be frustrating to expect this awareness to develop in a global way. It's going to, it's going to happen, and the attack on world glamour must follow the attack on world Maya. Now, we're attacking world Maya right now, and under the seventh ray, we'll be able to straighten it all out and bring some degree of rightful order to the etheric physical plane. And then, after having driven evil back onto the astral plane, as we are told to do, and we have to do it for several centuries, then will come the worldwide attack on glamour. The world teacher, Maitreya, Lord Maitreya, will be here, and maybe will help to lead this attack. The planet Vulcan will probably be discovered by that time. The spiritual will of the people will be strengthened. The illumination under Mercury of the mind of humanity will be reaching its apotheosis, the highest type of a certain type of mentality that will be developed for a long time. And I think that under the in the second decade of the age of Aquarius under Mercury, that's when that attack will really occur, and humanity will succeed in banishing the worst aspects of world glamour. That's my own opinion, but let us see. We'll all be around. We're going to be reincarnating. Let's not assume that we're having our last life right now. If we were a fourth degree initiate, we wouldn't be here. So here we are. Okay, thank you, Jen, for your thoughts. Okay, let's see. And Helena. Okay, go ahead. Helena, go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, good. I thought I was my opportunity to speak.
Oh.
I put my hand down. That's okay. It was in the stream of what we were talking about earlier that Olivia brought up. It really fighting these things on the astral and mental planes, where the majority of humanity right now is polarized on the astral plane. I have to shut the door because I'm hearing an echo. Just a moment.
Okay. You have two computers in the same.
Yeah, we have two computers in two different rooms, but Sheldon has his volume way up there, so this is much better. Good.
Okay.
Recently on 60 Minutes there was a wonderful presentation by Scott Kelly about fake news, and it was absolutely stunning. And I wrote a letter of peace to support that of how we, as part of the new group of world servers, can recognize what is really happening on that level to distort the truth. And it was just stunning to see these people being brought out. There is one man who has just a video in his living room. And so through the power of the spoken word, you know, his use of word through the media, video, and his writing, he has managed to whip up the emotions of people through his own emotions, and using words that are kind of crude and sensational, and that whips up everyone else's unredeemed astral nature. And then it was so interesting because he has on a bad month or a slow month, he has 80 million followers, and on a good month he has 150 million people watching this stuff, and they're spreading it out as if it's real. And it was an interesting thing that was said, that these people are caught inside this very, these are my words now, a forceful power of their own illusions that they're actually calling an echo chamber. They're inside of this echo chamber of false news, and they don't break out of it because they think it's real. And this isn't no one's immune from it. Unless you really are able to think clearly. So what I'm just struck by is, how do we help people really see this? And you know, I have a brother who is an evangelist, and he's very sincere, and he talks about discernment, and yet his emotions get whipped up, and he's inside of this glamour, and he's saying this is the real news, and that the fact-based news is what the fake news is. So it's a complete reversal, working on the energies of one's emotions, whipping those emotions up and disturbing the thought, because the discrimination is not very well developed, let alone discernment. So it's, you know, I was just thinking about how to help each other, how to help really to see this. And I think that one of the ways is to first recognize that when there is a technique being used to disrupt the emotions, to exaggerate the emotions, and then in that context talk about what's going on. I think that's one way.
Good.
So I just wanted to bring that up.
It's very good. Somehow this is all part of the general clearing which must occur before 2025. I'm reminded a century ago, you know, it's really interesting to me that DK did not contact Alice Bailey, even though he knew her in many lives previously, until 1919, which was after the armistice. There had to be this clearing of the warring parties and the subsiding. And also a great plague of influenza, had swept through humanity as well, killing millions of people. You know, it was like the end of this whole process, and then things were clear enough for him to begin 30 years' work. Well, I think we're facing the same thing right now. And the third installment of teaching, 2025, you know, just imagine the clearing that we have to go through. So, you know, although many of us were not thrilled with the election results, in a way, in terms of dredging the bottom of human consciousness and seeing all the stuff that's polluting our thinking down there until we register it in front of our eyes, we have an ideal situation, if you believe Master Moria when he says the worse the better. So up it comes, and we're going to have to deal with it. And as esoterically inclined people, we have special methods of doing that. But and you know what I'm saying, and everybody who's really thinking about it knows what I'm saying. More will be exacted from us these next 8 years than ever has been, you know, of people in this incarnation. So let's get ready. It's happening right now. Happening. Thank you for those thoughts. Appreciate that. Okay, and Daisy, I think I read your question before. So, well, we're just about at the point where we're going to meditate, friends, on the Glamour of materialism. Let's just say that when we are bound by Mars and the five senses, and that which the lower five senses reveal, and even though useful, we take it as ultimate reality, we are a materialist. When we do not understand the causal nature of the subtler planes and how everything in the lowest of worlds descended from energies and forces from the subtler planes, we are a materialist. And when we value this dense aggregation, this congestion of the lowest type of substance, when we value it more than the sources from which it came, we are a materialist. And when you look around at human consciousness, well, it's under the third-ray personality of the earth, it's very materialistic. Okay. Now, DK said, okay, the atom bomb goes off, and he calls this thing a spiritual event because it struck a lethal blow against materialism. And now we know, although it hasn't really sunk into so many people, that matter is really energy. So the energy is the reality and not this, what does he call it? A densification or I can't think of the word. I just mentioned it a minute ago, but it's some kind of congestion. We are dealing with the congestion of the lower planes, and we think it's reality, and we judge. Our standard is the preservation of what we think is real, and we are thinking that the very lowest possible perceptions are reality. Like what you see is what you get, and you look in the mirror, and that's who I am, and all of it is a huge illusion. It's a great Maya. Now, we've really got to change human consciousness so that the implications of the release of atomic energy begin to sink home. He says, look, Master DK says, materialism is dead. It is dead, but it's taking a long time to die, okay? And we have people in power who are just obviously materialists, just obvious. They have no wider perception of reality. We have to, through our teaching, through our life demonstration, whatever, we have to offer the understanding of the wider reality than just what the Martian five senses reveal. So we're going to work for a while on the glamour of materialism, realizing, of course, that it feeds right in with the glamour of egotism, the glamour of hatred, the glamour of separativeness. All these things impact upon each other and strengthen each other, and we have to find the means of weakening every one of them so that they all collapse together. Now, it's not going to happen for a few centuries, we know that, but there can be a sufficient de-glamorization of the human psyche to create the possibility of a better world, at least to be on the way to that. So as far as the climax goes, it's not going to happen right now, but we're getting to work on it right now. And people like ourselves, everybody, we're going to be around. We'll have new incarnations. We will take the thread of occultism and we will continue to develop it in our future lives. And we're working now toward the future. So we have plenty to do. Okay, well, I tell you what, I know there's other things to be said, but time is passing. So let us simply go to our meditation. And remember that tomorrow we have the Ask program invoking the soul of nations. That's a broadcast. Tuija will lead that. And I'm not sure exactly what we'll do, but, we are sort of an emergency esoteric service. And at the same time, we are also studying the different nations and how to bring their soul potentials forward. We're doing both of those things. And then on Sunday, the attracting money for hierarchical purposes. That's a 5 p.m. thing. And then GMT. Everything is GMT. I'm keeping everything on universal time so we can learn how our particular time zone relates to GMT. It's only going to change 1 hour forward and then go back to where it was. And some of you won't change at all. You know, like if you live here in Arizona, where I'm doing this webinar, it never changes. It's always got the same relation to GMT. And maybe if you live in Vietnam, it's the same thing, and certain other places. But you can only vary by 1 hour from GMT. So learn what is your GMT offset. And when you have summertime, you're a little, then you have a certain number of hours from U to GMT. And when you don't have summertime, you have a different number of hours. Just learn those two things, and you will always know when these programs are taking place. Okay, so let's get on with it now. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed something, and I don't want to miss it. Carl, you'll be the last one to speak. You can the question of the thought that you had. You can offer that now, Carl. I missed you, and I'm sorry. Do you hear me? Uh-oh. Let's try it again. Yep, now you're on. Go ahead, Carl. Try it. Are you there? Something's with your computer, because your microphone is clear and you should be able to speak, but make sure you're not on mute in some way. I saw your name up 10 minutes ago at least, but okay, well, we may not be able to handle that right this moment. But anyway, thanks for having a thought to offer. All right. So now our dissipation of world glamour, it's going to be the glamour of materialism, which is it's just a case of taking the lowest form of actuality as if it were the real, when in fact it is the most unreal and the most impermanent. You know, some of you were talking about the astral plane. There's an inversion that goes on. We call it the astral inversion. And basically what happens is reality gets flipped. Plus looks like minus, minus looks like plus, and it's all because there's a bending of truth, or a flipping of truth, that occurs as a result of the energies and forces of the astral plane. So we're going to learn how to avoid that astral flip. And when we do, under Vulcan, we will have a true sense of values. Taurus, Vulcan. Finally, when Vulcan is discovered, spiritual will is discovered, divine plan is understood, we will have a true sense of values, and the astral flip will no longer occur, and will stop desiring what is worthless or of less worth. So let's make sure that whatever, Master Moria says, we can't get rid of desire, but let us at least co-measure our desires so they are of the greatest value. Okay, so here we go. Now, we won't name all the group members, we're too many, but here we are in these different places. And also, mostly it's Europe, mostly US and the Americas and Australasia, but sometimes we're joined by people in Asia or in Northern Africa, and we want to welcome everybody wherever you may be. So we have a little bit of silence. In the silence, we come together as a group. And we feel, whatever we are as a personality, we feel our unity on the plane of the soul. One unity of willing workers meditating for a better world. And one can feel the energy intensifying in the silence as the group coalesces, comes together. So with a degree of unity between us, we're going to use the protective formula. We use, the sign of the cross is not a Christian symbol per se. It's an astrological symbol. All of the great constellations, they have these crosses between them representing different stages of evolution and different symbology. Common cross, fixed cross of the soul, cardinal cross of the spirit, So we have to separate that symbol of the cross from its appropriation strictly by Christianity. It belongs to all humanity and is a much deeper thing. So we use our forehead, our chest, our left eye, our right eye, and we say the protective formula because we need it. Glamours are horrific and very powerful and can take us over, so we stand in the light and we together protect ourselves with the ancient symbolism of the cross. Ancient indeed. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Visualize the light in which you are standing, and because of this light in which we are all standing, we are protected from the insidious forces of the glamours we are attempting to overcome. The whole group stands in light. Now, in preparation, we bring the three lights together. The dual light of matter and mind. It's the etheric physical light, especially the etheric light, and the light of mind, and we raise this imaginatively to the mental plane, to the mental vehicle. The vitality of the group personality and the thinking power of the group mind. We bring these two together. We have intelligence, we have vitality. And now we meditate on soul contact and the recognition of soul light. However you want to visualize that, it's often the light above the head or the causal body. It's the light above. It's very real. It's the light of the solar angel in the causal body. It's the light of the soul. And we bring it down in stage 3. We fuse the light of vitality and of reasoning mind with the light of the soul. We bring the three lights together on the plane of mind. Use your imagination to do this, and then we become the vitalized mind held steady in the light. The light of the soul, the light of reason, the light of vitality of matter, together as one light. Now, this is a visualization we're all holding, and we're going to affirm together the following little mantra, thinking of its meaning as we go, followed by the sacred word 3 times. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. The day begins on the Buddhic plane, ruled by Scorpio, and it's called the light of day. So, ever greater light. Now we're going to address the formula, and as we do this, we're going to visualize that we have turned on a great searchlight, a beam, and it's going to be empowered by the will. That beam is going to reach out onto the astral plane, and it's going to weaken, dissipate, attack, destroy the dark clouds of glamour, the fogs, the mists, which misdirect our desire nature and make us desire what is not of value and not desire what is of value. That's the problem in a nutshell. So now we are going to visualize this weakening of the glamours in general, and we'll use the group formula, which say it together, visualize and think about what it means. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. This is the spiritual triad with the lower planes. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. The world of meaning is the world of the soul, and we link it with the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And we're going to strengthen our beam as we invoke the spiritual will, the will to good, from the monadic level, the atmic level, various parts of the soul. The spiritual will descends, we imagine this, into our beam of light, and it becomes more effective because it is strengthened by our determination, our willed determination, to see the darkness give way to the light of truth. Our beam is strengthened by the spiritual will, and we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And that goal is the dissipation of the glamours of the astral plane, and especially now we are working on the glamour of materialism. Think for a moment, reflect for a moment so that the spirit of understanding can guide our work. What has materialism brought to humanity? What are the ills, the evils, the miscreations which have occurred as humanity works under, all unconsciously, the glamour of materialism? We'll take a few moments just to think about some of the things that have resulted from this. This is a glamour, we are told, that descended during the Atlantean period, particularly. Humanity used to have contact with the higher beings and the higher worlds, but things became so dense under the misuse of the fifth ray and in early Aryan times that we were cut off from the inner worlds and began to interpret everything in terms of what the five senses, the lower five senses, reveal. We know there are higher senses, we know, but the lowest of the senses began to control everything. Ordinary hearing, ordinary touch, ordinary sight, ordinary taste, ordinary smell, and nothing beyond. So now we're going to use the three words of power that Master DK has given us in this formula, and we will visualize as we do so the light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and dissipation. This blindness, this unique blindness of materialism. It doesn't mean you can't use matter, but you can't be ruled by it. So, here we utter together the three words of power, and then we will go into 5 minutes of silence. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of materialism. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of materialism from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. There's no more vitality to sustain it. It will not appear. Its quality will not affect humanity. The life which supports it is destroyed. The vitality is removed. So now, in the silence, we visualize the light penetrating the glamour, producing its weakening and dissipation. You work in your own way for 5 minutes. As we make our attack upon the clouds, the fogs, the mists, the veils, which symbolize for us on the astral plane the glamour of materialism and its effects. It's a huge glamour related to the personality ray of our planetary logos. Now we work with our visualization, doing our best to see the effects of this glamour dissipated, working with our will-inspired beam of light, and here we begin. And so our whole sense of values changes. And like the Buddha, in his Four Noble Truths, we learn not to desire as real that which is found within the dense physical body of the planetary logos, the lower 18 subplanes, and especially in this congestion of matter we call the outer plane. When we change from the glamour of materialism into a realization of the truth, we eliminate a superficiality of consciousness. Materialism is superficial, profoundly superficial, closing out the worlds of reality. And in the Aquarian age of energies, there will be a major blow against materialism. It has already been struck, but the effects have to work out and be sustained, the process sustained by our understanding of this. So let the sun of truth and reality shine upon the astral plane. May the clouds be dissipated, the mists, the fogs, the energies which confine our consciousness to low levels of unreality. May those energies and forces be dissipated, leading to a much more subtle consciousness. And so we withdraw our beam, we withdraw the beam to the mental plane, we turn the searchlight off imaginatively. The searchlight of the soul is shut off, says the Tibetan. And we sound the Om. If we were a smaller group, every member would sound it, but we'll sound it together 3 times, realizing that we have all done a piece of work to help weaken the hold of materialism, believing in the reality of that which the senses reveal. We've struck a little blow against materialism, so we are freed a little bit from the mistaken notion that what we perceive with the 5 lower senses is real. It's the least real of everything, however useful it may be in the transformative process. 3 times the Om. For work done principally on the astral plane, but including the mental plane and the etheric physical plane. Thank you, friends. Think about materialism in your own life. We are all victims of it. There will be a transformation into the second ray soul of our planet, but it'll have to take place at the second cosmic initiation. No sooner than that, certainly. We still have a third ray materialistic personality on this planet, and to one extent or another, we are all victims of the glamour of materiality and materialism. So let us do everything to use what we see, but realize that it is the least real of all things that are. That may be quite a step. So anyway, you know our Ask broadcasts are coming up, and you know that we have a special Science of Triangles webinar coming up at 5 a.m. in the morning, GMT, Universal Time, April 3rd, Monday, and, probably earlier for the people in the States and in South America, and later for those in Australia and so forth, New Zealand. Thank you very much for attending. This will be, available on Makara as Brett has been putting them up. Let your friends know that we are attacking glamour together and, join in the group process of clearing the glamour out of our own lives. And it's really subtle stuff, People don't know they have them until they really see the effects and until maybe other people point things out. So it's a subtle process and a humbling process for all of us when we think we don't have glamours, and in fact we do. So we'll work forward, and we'll see you at our next meetings, broadcasts, and webinars. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your presence, your participation, and your mutual support. All the best to everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.